Why hello there! I promised you I'm going to start doing videos about the game that I'm going to make, and here I am, doing videos about the game that I'm going to make. But before that, let's have a word from our sponsor, I'm just kidding, I don't have a sponsor. Okay, before I do anything I need to make some disclaimers. First things first, I am not a professional game designer, okay? Everything I do is purely for hobby and for fun. Let's have that out of the way. And second, if you notice some really huge error that I make, or you have some idea of how I can improve certain stuff when it comes to programming, I'll gladly look into it. But I'm going to say that again, I'm not a professional programmer and I'm not a professional game designer, so my skill is not very high. I just do whatever I can with the tools I have, and that's that. Anyways, let's just jump right into it. Okay, so in today's video, I'm going to set up the very basis for the map that I'm going to use in the game. It's going to be very stupidly simple. It's going to be a square map with just a few blocks. It's not as complex as the Total War maps are. No different shapes and sizes, just the very basic blocks. And for that we're going to have to calculate some variables. And I'm going to show you how to do that as well. This will extensively center our map on the screen, because what you see here is not centered, it's off center. Anyways, let's just jump right in. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a sprite for our map tiles. And the thing about that is this is pure placeholder. It's going to be replaced later on with actual graphics. Everything I do right now is going to be placeholder, okay? Everything you see right now, everything we're going to do in this episode is setting up the very basics that we're going to change later on into an actual usable systems. So the map tile graphics I'm going to make right now are simply for debugging purposes, to see that the systems, the code I'm writing is actually doing what I need it to do. This is not going to be what the game is going to draw at the end as visuals. I'm going to save here, save after every step, it's very important if you don't want to lose the progress that you've made. Then I'm going to create an object, and this is going to just be the tile object. Right now we're not going to do anything with it, I'm just going to assign the sprite to it, and that will be that. We're going to mess with this object later. After that I'm going to create another object that I'm going to name map controller. This is where all the magic is going to happen. Today I'm going to work almost exclusively with this one. I don't need a sprite for this one, and this one is going to create the map, later on read the map from the data we're going to save in the next episode and stuff like that. You'll see, it's going to be fun. Right now I'm going to use the create event, although later on I'm going to have to trick the game. So the create event is basically when this object map controller is created, but I want this object to be used in multiple rooms, so I'm going to have to trick the game, but I'm going to do that later on. You'll see, it's not that complex. Okay, so let's just start with the create event. Commenting on every line of code you have is a very smart idea. It helps you later on when you just go into the code you haven't touched in a long time to just understand what you've done and why you've done the things you've done. So this object is going to create our map and place the tiles on their respective places. Now we're going to need a bunch of variables for this. First I'm going to create a variable map size. This variable will not exist in the final product and the final game. I'm currently using it just for debugging to see if the code I'm going to write is going to do what I want it to do. So I'm just going to randomize this between 3x3 and 5x5 map size. Yeah, something random. It doesn't really matter, the important part comes later on. This is just to help the later on code execute. Then I'm going to create the variable named tile type. This tile type, this is basically what's going to tell our land tiles if they are grasslands or farms or forests or mountains or whatever they are. So those are initial variables that will just help us create the world there. Now we're going to generate the actual map. For that purpose I'm going to use a couple of for loops. For creating the world map I'm going to use two-dimensional arrays. When you use two-dimensional arrays, the best tool you have is for loops. If you're not familiar with for loops, familiarize yourself. You can do so much with them, it's not even funny. Basically, they have a bunch of parameters and they execute whatever you have between those two brackets, as long as the variable is in between the parameters you set for it. The variable is I, and the variable needs to be between 0 and the map size. The map size that I have randomly generated. So yeah, and it will continue doing that and add numbers to the I variable until it reaches the map size, and then it will stop. It's not complicated once you wrap your head around it, super simple. So inside that for loop I'm going to have another for loop, because we have a two-dimensional array. The one for loop will run through the rows of the two-dimensional array, while the other will run through the columns of the two-dimensional array. Now I'm going to use a variable named j, and we're going to basically do exactly the same thing. Because remember, our map will be square, it basically have the same amount of cells horizontally as it does vertically. Now remember that picture I showed you earlier. Remember those variables that we have here that are side, top and spacing between the different cells. Now we need those variables calculated. They're very simple to calculate, since we want our tiles to basically be in the center of the screen. So I'm just going to write the variables I need to calculate here. So I'm going to use horizontal spacing and vertical spacing. Everything we do is very simple math. Our side spacing here is basically, how to say it, we're going to have our room size, the room visible where the map is going to be. We're going to have our room size, from which we're going to subtract all the space that the different tiles are going to take. How much space the different tiles are going to take is basically the amount of tiles multiplied by the size of each tile. So we have map size times 64. The map size is the amount of tiles, and the 64 is the size of each tile. And we're going to subtract that number that we get from the room width, the size of the room. And now we have the free space that is left horizontally. And we're going to divide that by 2, just because we want half of it on one side of our world map and half of it on the other side. You basically can see what this is in the picture here. Yep. The top is pretty much exactly the same, but instead of room width we're going to use room height, and instead of 64 we're going to use the height of the sprites we're using currently, which are 32 pixels. So it's pretty much the exact same code. Now the horizontal spacing and the vertical spacing between the cells is very simple. It's just the size of the tile itself, because we want one tile spacing between one tile and the next tile, so you have a full tile, you know, they don't overlap. So it's just 64 horizontally and 32 vertically. The best thing you can do when you're programming is not use hard numbers. And we're going to see that I'm not going to use hard numbers, I'm going to change those things, so everything in here is variables. You're not going to see almost any raw numbers in here. This is just temporary, yeah? I'm going to comment on that as well, because we need this for later on when we come back and actually use the final code. But this is just to make the thing work. Now, we're going to create each tile. Now remember, we're going to have a run of those for loops for every row and every column. Basically, we're going to run this code for every single piece of our two-dimensional array, which we don't even see right now. Oh, fun! Instance create is basically the command in GameMaker that creates objects. The x-coordinate, it's basically the center of the tile. The center of the tile, we need to have the side spacing, yeah, plus, and to that we need to add the number of the tile times the horizontal spacing. Meaning if you're the first tile, you're just create it first, but if you're the fifth tile, you need to have all the tiles before that, 1, 2, 3 and 4 created before you. So you need to leave space for there and then be created on the last fifth place, yeah? And then we're going to add 32, because if you can recall, we have our origin point, our spawn point is the center of our image, which is 32 horizontally, 16 vertically. So we need to add 32 to the horizontal spacing and the 16 to the vertical spacing. And we're creating object tile, yeah? This is what it's needed in order to start creating our tiles. We calculated the location of each tile, and we created a tile where each tile is supposed to be. Now, you see this tile type over here. We're going to use that in order to tell each tile what land it has. Does it has a mountain or forest or just a grassland or whatever. And again, this is going to be later on read from a file, but now we're just going to randomize it just to see if this thing that I'm writing right now is a code, just to see if this code works. Yeah, so I'm going to randomize it right now. I'm going to comment on this and just write down what each number means, because this needs to be consistent throughout the entire game, throughout the different objects I'm going to use. So if I can get this comment everywhere I need it, this will be absolutely consistent. So 0 to 2, there will be more, but right now just use 0 to 2. And here is something else. This instance create function actually gives you the ID number of the instance that is created. So it gives you the ID number of each tile that is created. And we can use that to send variables in between different objects. If you know the ID of the object or the name of the specific object, you can set variables from one object that takes effect into a different object, okay? So the object we're going to set variable into is object tile, and the variable we're going to set inside that object is variable type. And what we are setting it to is the variable tile type. It's a bit confusing, but the dot basically means that it's a variable inside an object, while the underscore is just spacing in the name, yeah, because we cannot use spacing in the code. So now we're going to go to our tile object, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the draw event. And before I do anything in the draw event, I'm just going to copy those. This comment specifically, because I want it to be in every object that it will take effect. This comment is very important. So the first thing we're going to draw is our sprite. We absolutely always going to draw our sprite. So draw self, and then we need to draw text. We need to draw, and this is again just for debugging purposes. I want to see that I have transferred the variable properly. You know what? This is not going to work the way I thought it would. I don't need to do calculations constantly in the draw event especially. I can do calculations in the step event if I need to do any calculations. But I'm going to set the parameters here first, and then I'm going to go in the step event, and I'm going to do my calculations and create my variables. And the draw event is just going to use those variables. You do not want to make heavy calculations in the draw event. If you need to do that, do it in the step event and then just use the variables in the draw event. It massively speeds up. The draw event is very slow, okay, let's say it that way. The draw event is very slow. If you can use other events to calculate stuff, you better use other events to calculate stuff. Yep. Now we already sent a variable named type from the other object, so I'm just going to draw the variable type. Now in the step event I'm going to do something different. I'm going to comment here debugging because this is not final code. I'm going to keep saying that because it's not. Now, you know, I just realized something. I have called too many variables with the same name type, and nobody wants that. This will massively confuse your program, because this is type, and the variable we send from one object to the other is also name type. So I'm going to change the variable in the draw event to type string, because we're basically sending number to our tile. So the type we have from the controller object is just a number, while the type we want to draw on the screen is string. I'm going to use a switch statement. The thing about the switch statement is it has a very specific use, but what it does the best is replace just a bunch of if statements. Okay, I have one variable here, and my variable is variable type. So we're going to say switch type, and then we have different cases. In case the variable type is this, do that. Instead, in case of variable type being different value, do something else. You know, this is what the switch command does. You can do that with a bunch of if statements, but the if statements will massively overcomplicate your code. So, in case the variable type is 0, we have type string is going to be grass, because this is what we have in the comment up above. This is why I transferred the code, this comment everywhere. And we're going to basically do the same thing with the other two values. That is basically all there is to it. Now, I do not need to calculate that in every step. I just need to calculate that in the very beginning, because this is one time. Once you have your tile value, tile type as a mountain, it will not just stop being a mountain, it will be a mountain throughout the entire game. So all you need really is just to do this one time in the create event. Now I'm going to create my room, and in the room I'm just going to place our map controller object. Now the map controller object is going to create the rest of the map. So let's just run and see what's going on. Momentarily we have issues, because of course I'm always happy when things don't work properly. Let's see, now do I need to remove this column? I guess I need to remove those. I think that's all there is to it, actually. We'll see. Refresh? No, refresh is not working. Okay, let's try again. Whoop! We have an error, which is actually a progress, believe it or not. Variable object tile dot type not set before reading it. Okay. So this is what I was afraid of. The variable type, I am not sure, since I do everything in the create event, I am not sure that if I set it and then use it, I will be, the map controller will be overriding the variable, or if the setting of the variable will override what the map controller throws at me. And I don't really want to set the alarm just for debugging purposes, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move that type generation from the map controller object into the tile object. And again, this is purely for debugging purposes, so it does not really matter all that much. Later on, each tile will just draw its data from the ini file that we're going to create. So this will not be an issue, yeah? So okay, let's move that to the tile object and just randomize it from 0 to 2. And now every tile will be different. Let's test run what we have so far, and okay, it's working, but our font is white, so we cannot read anything. So what I'm going to do is just change the font color to black. Save and we'll run. And there we go. Good, good. We have each tile different type. Forest, mountain, grass, grass, mountain, mountain, forest, mountain, mountain, forest, grass, forest, and so on and so forth. Which is exactly what we want. We want each tile to be of different type. Now, this means that we can change different variables in different objects, and we can send data between the objects, even though I didn't make it properly this time, but it's not all that important. This we will change that. This is why we're going to use an ini file, because we're not going to send data from one object to another. We're going to save data. We're going to send data from one object to the ini file, and then the other object is going to read it from the ini file. And here I noticed a little issue with the algorithm I created, and it doesn't really randomize the size of the world map. It just makes the largest size that I have set for it. Yeah, the irandom range from 3 to 5 always gives the result of 5. So if I give it a range, okay, I'll give it a larger range, 2 to 6. So this can give an answer 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And it's still just going to give me the largest size possible. I'm not entirely sure why, but this does not matter at all, because we're just going to have all the data in the external file. So we're going to read all the data, we're not going to generate it on the go. And the command is correct. If it wasn't correct, GameMaker would have given me an error, and since it doesn't give me an error, that's that. Calculating the parameters of the map, this thing is very flexible, because with just changing a couple of numbers you can have different types of maps. Now, me writing 69 here instead of 64 basically adds 5 pixels in between each tile on the map. Just making tiny little changes like that in the there, you see? Yeah. Small space of 5 pixels in between each tile. Just making small tiny little changes like that can result in a huge difference in the final result. So we're going to add 2 spaces vertically for that map. Like that, see? So now whenever I actually put the graphics in, they will have some separation in between them, they won't overlap, and there will be more room in between them, you know? If you don't want more room in between them, you can easily just go back to 64 and not deal with that. Yeah, 64 and 32, it's not really a big deal. Each tile will be flush next to each other. Now, here's another thing that we're going to do, but we're going to do it in the next episode because this one really dragged on. If we grab all of that and move them inside those 4 loops, yeah, if we grab those and move them over here, we will generate different parameters for each tile, basically. We don't need to generate for each tile, but we can generate for each row and each column, which is very, very cool. This will help us create, change the map from this into this and basically create fake depth. Since the tiles on the back will look smaller, will seem to be smaller than the tiles that are on the front. But we're going to create the fake depth in the next episode. Yeah, simply because this one dragged really long time. And this is our map that we currently have. And next time we're going to trick your mind and trick the game that you're actually looking on at. We're going to create fake perspective, okay? We're going to create a fake perspective. Okay, this is all I have for this episode, and I'm going to be back soon with the next one. If you want to stay tuned with the progress, best thing you can do is subscribe to my channel, and that will be that. See ya!